The UFC's lightweight division is by far the best weight class in the UFC, and after UFC 314, you now have Paddy Pimblett entering the mix as a legitimate contender. And even in this division with so much talent, there's actually only one ranked fighter who is currently booked. So you have number 13 Benoit Saint Denis booked against Joel Alvarez. The other 14 ranked fighters and the champion all are without their next matchup. And so in today's video, I'm going to go through and play matchmaker for every single ranked fighter, including the champion, just kind of laying out how I think this division should play out moving forward. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you agree with my matchups, let me hear it. If you disagree, you have some other takes, would love to hear it also. If you enjoy, hit that like button and subscribe. But we have to start it off here with the champion, Islam Makhachev. And it does seem like there's some debate on who he should fight next, who he should defend his title against. In my opinion, it's a no-brainer, and it should be Ilia Topuria. I just think this is a fight that has to happen. These are the top two pound-for-pound fighters in the world. You have Ilia Topuria, who's just had this meteoric rise. He's undefeated, as a pro and in the UFC. He has knockout title wins against Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. And then Islam Makhachev is viewed by most as the lightweight GOAT. And I could understand the argument, right? Ilia Topuria moving up. Maybe you don't give him an immediate title shot if you have like a super deserving number one contender, but you just don't, right? Like that was Arman Tsarukyan. He had to pull out, the day before the fight. It's clear the UFC is not going to give him, that title shot right away again. And so now you're throwing out like Charles Oliveira coming off a decision win over Michael Chandler. People want to see Justin Gaethje after a decision win over Rafael Fiziev. I honestly feel like I'm kind of losing my mind sometimes when I hear people make the cases for some of these other guys, when it's like, you have this all-time great featherweight in Ilia moving up. I don't think you can convince me that like any other fighter has a better chance of beating Islam than Ilia Topuria. It's the biggest fight. This is a matchup where it doesn't happen. We're going to look back on it like 5-10 years from now and just be like, how did this fight never come to fruition? They were in the same weight class. It was right there. This is the fight that should happen, Islam Makhachev defending his title against Ilia Topuria. Then next up, we'll talk about the big winner from UFC 314. I think Paddy Pimblett's next fight is going to be against Charles Oliveira. Now, keep in mind, if the UFC doesn't go with Ilia for the title fight, then all of this would shake up, right? You could potentially make Paddy Pimblett against Ilia Topuria, but I think Ilia should be getting that title shot. So I have Paddy Pimblett here taking on Charles, and Paddy's coming off that dominant win against Michael Chandler. Just an extremely impressive performance. And I thought he definitely had a chance to win. I picked Chandler, but even in my breakdown of thinking, he could do well, potentially find a finish or, win a decision, I didn't think it would be as dominant as it was. And so even if he had gotten through Chandler, there was still, potential where I'm looking at him against some of the top guys in the world, and I don't think he has a great shot. And I still think he probably, loses pretty clearly to a guy like Arman, Islam, someone like Ilia. But I think this Charles Oliveira matchup specifically is interesting just in terms of how they match up stylistically. Both these guys are great grapplers. They're both dangerous, but kind of hittable strikers on the feet. And so I think these are two very big stars in the weight class. I think this could be a potential number one contender fight. And I just think, you have these two big names. Stylistically, it makes sense. You put them together. I think you're going to get a really fun fight. And regardless of who wins, right? If Paddy takes down Charles, that's obviously going to be a huge win, adding to his star power a ton. If Charles gets the win, all right, great. Now you have the opportunity to put him in another title fight. And obviously he's going to have a ton of hype behind his name. So that's a potential number one contender fight. I think we have another matchup that's a potential number one contender fight, and that is Arman Tsarukyan taking on Justin Gaethje. So I kind of mentioned this already, but I pretty strongly disagree with Justin Gaethje getting the title shot. I know you can make the case that he had already kind of earned it before he took the Max Holloway fight, but he still took the Max Holloway fight and got knocked out cold, right? So one fight win streak against number 11 Fiziev on short notice, decision win. That's just not swaying me here. Arman had her in that title shot, but obviously he's not going to get it after pulling out. So I think a win for either of these dudes would really kind of stamp their case. If Gaethje picked up this win, 2 wins in a row, you beat Arman Tsarukyan, I think that's title shot worthy. For Arman Tsarukyan, you kind of screwed up the title shot, got hurt, whatever. You pick up a win against Justin Gaethje, a top tier fighter. You are now definitely in the mix to get another title opportunity. If all these matchups end up taking place at around the same time, I think we have this interesting potential outcome where, say, Islam Makhachev defends his title against Ilia Topuria and JDM ends up beating Bilal Muhammad for the welterweight title. I think there's a legitimate chance that Islam Makhachev vacates at 155, moves up, and tries to continue his career up at welterweight. And if he does that, then you have this nice runway for the vacant title fight, where you then just make the winners of these matchups. So the winner of Paddy Pimblett, Charles Oliveira, taking on the winner of Arman Tsarukyan, Justin Gaethje, and no one's going to be, batting an eye at one of those dudes being the champ, right? Because they'd have to pick up two huge wins against very high-level opponents. And so with the fact that Islam Makhachev could potentially leave the weight class, I think having these big matchups all kind of take place in a similar time frame makes a lot of sense. Now we're kind of getting into, some fun matchups here, a little bit farther away from the title picture, but we have the Dustin Poirier retirement fight. And I went with the Dustin Poirier Max Holloway trilogy. I kind of picked this one because it seems like it's already in the works. Like, I feel like this is where we're heading. To be totally honest with you, I kind of hate it just because I don't want to see either of these guys lose. But like, Dustin's only fighting legends. Pretty much everyone here at the top of 155 who's a legend is pretty likable. From a fight perspective, this is obviously going to be a banger. The first fight took place when they were both very young. Second fight, super entertaining. We now have Max Holloway like really committing to moving up to 155. He had the amazing performance against Justin Gaethje. I expect this to be very competitive. I would also be very cool with the Dustin Poirier-Dan Hooker rematch. The only problem with that is then I feel like it leaves Max Holloway without a legit fight. So like, maybe he wants to wait, bulk up at 155. Like, if he wants to do that, I think it could make sense. And then he can just, find a winner or loser from some of those other matchups I mentioned. But I think for Dustin at this point, it's probably looking like Holloway or potentially the Dan Hooker rematch. I did not list Dan Hooker against Dustin Poirier, so we have to find a fight now for Dan. And I think he has a couple of options here. I think if you were just going to find someone that's still available that I haven't matched up, I think Renato Moicano could make some sense here. I also think it's possible that he just kind of waits, fully recovers from his hand injury, and then just like sees some of the other big names out there, because he had that hand injury that forced him out of UFC 313, had the big opportunity against Justin Gaethje. He's ranked number 6. He's on a 3-fight win streak. You would assume that he would want to fight up in the rankings. Moicano's ranked number 10. He's coming off that loss to Islam Makhachev, but before that, was on a 4-fight win streak, was in a position where he should fight up. I don't think it would be crazy, for him to continue to fight up even after that loss, right? Like, it's not like he lost to Beneil, who was only ranked a couple spots ahead of him. And these guys have gone back and forth on social media. It seems like they've had potential to fight in years past. So Dan Hooker, Renato Moicano could be the fight. Or if you're Dan Hooker, you might just want to wait, potentially take on the loser of Tsarukyan Gaethje. Potentially Max Holloway could be out there, the loser of Paddy Charles. Like, those are all options if he thinks he can wait and just let his hand heal up. Then we have Michael Chandler here, and I don't have a matchup for him. I think Michael Chandler should retire. He's lost 3 straight. He's lost 5 of his last 6. He's taken so much damage in those last 6 fights. The man's 38 years old. He's had a very long career. I think he's made a lot of money. He's got stuff going on, outside of MMA. He has nothing left to prove. I just think he should, pack it in and walk away from the sport. Up next, we have Mateusz Gamrot, and I'm kind of struggling to find some matchups for some of these American top team guys, because you have 4 dudes here in the top 15 who I think are all pretty consistent training partners. Like, Arman Tsarukyan trains at American top team, but I don't think he's in this same grouping, where you have Dustin Poirier, Mateusz Gamrot, Grant Dawson, and Renato Moicano, who I think are all in there pretty much, consistently, and I think they're all training together. Believe they all have Mike Brown as their head coach, but I know I've seen, variations of all 4 of those dudes, working together, and so they're probably not going to want to match up against each other. I think, Gamrot Moicano is a fight that could make sense based on the rankings. I think Gamrot Dawson could make sense based on the rankings, but I'm just not going to book them together because I don't think they would actually fight each other. So I went with Mateusz Gamrot taking on the winner of the Benoit Saint Denis Joel Alvarez fight. So BSD is currently ranked number 13. If he wins, obviously he's going to hold on to that spot. If Alvarez wins, he'll likely replace him there. I think both these matchups, regardless of who wins that fight, are very interesting. Gamrot is very wrestling heavy. So is BSD. Joel Alvarez pretty much defends 0 takedowns because his submission offense is so impressive. So interesting matchups for both. Gamrot, coming off the split decision loss to Dan Hooker, probably should be fighting back in the rankings. That accomplishes this. If BSD or Alvarez win, they likely should be fighting up, and that would be against Mateusz Gamrot. Then we are going to go with Rafael Fiziev here. And this is assuming he doesn't move down to 145. I guess I'd have him fight Ignacio Bahamondes. This has already been rumored for an upcoming fight night card. To be honest, I think Fiziev should move down. You just look at how undersized he was against Justin Gaethje, and I don't think Gaethje is considered to be like a monstrous 155er. The fact that Fiziev was able to, easily make weight on 2 weeks' notice, he probably is the size of a featherweight. And then you're matching him up here against Ignacio Bahamondes, who is a massive lightweight. I think, physically they're just going to look so extremely different when they're in there. But this was rumored for the UFC Baku card. If he does stay up, it's striker versus striker. You're going to want Rafael Fiziev on that card. He's ranked number 11. He's lost 3 fights in a row, but like the knee injury against Gamrot, back-to-back, very competitive fights against Justin Gaethje. But so he should be fighting back. Bahamondes, ranked number 15. 3 straight wins, all finishes, just came off that submission win against Jalen Turner. In terms of the rankings, it definitely makes sense. Also just a fun striking battle between these two. Then we have Beneil Dariush, and I'm actually going to have him fighting outside the rankings against Mauricio Rufy. This is the fight that Rufy called for after his wheel kick knockout against Bobby Green. Dariush is coming off of back-to-back knockout losses. He hasn't fought since 2023. He has not won a fight since 2022. Now, I know he was booked and was supposed to fight Renato Moicano. Arman pulls out. Moicano gets bumped up to the championship fight. Beneil Dariush now doesn't have an opponent. So he kind of got screwed there, but this is a long time without a win. This is a long time without an actual fight. He's number 9 in the rankings. So him with back-to-back losses, fighting outside of the rankings wouldn't be crazy. He's also not some huge name who's known for super exciting fights where you really want to protect his ranking, keep him locked in that top 10. So I think the Rufy fight makes sense. Give, the young stud an opportunity to crack his way into the top 10. All of his fights have been super exciting. This Fighting Nerd team is really just running through everyone. So Dariush Rufy, I think, was a super fun fight to make if Dariush would be willing to take it and fight outside the rankings. And then the last matchup I have here, Grant Dawson. He's in a weird spot here. So he's ranked number 14. He's on a 3-fight win streak. So ideally, he should be getting someone ranked. He should be fighting up in the rankings. The problem is that the most realistic matchups, in my opinion, would be Moicano or Gamrot, which are not reasonable based on them being teammates. You could pitch me on a Beneil Dariush fight, but I do think they're going to try to use Beneil to get one of these, young up-and-coming prospects over. And so for Grant Dawson, I have him taking on Faraz Ziam. I think the way you pitch this to Grant Dawson is you say, I understand this isn't what you want, but you fight Faraz Ziam and just guarantee that he will get a big-time opponent after this, right? So if he beats Ziam, you're telling him you're launching him into the top 10, you're taking on, a potential Dan Hooker, some of those dudes who lost one of those top matchups. Because I do think just with the way I've, scheduled these matchups, he is kind of in a tough spot where this is not a great fight for him. Ziam, obviously unranked, has won 5 straight fights, had the statement knee knockout against Matt Frivola. His last fight was a unanimous decision win against Mike Davis. I think this also could have gone to Ludovic Klein. I think he's also knocking on the door of a top 15 shot. But Faraz Ziam, someone who I do think deserves a crack at the top 15. Grant Dawson just in this weird spot where he's towards the bottom of the rankings. Ideally would be fighting up, just kind of not really in the cards with the way I've matchmaked here at 155. So that is going to wrap it up for all the fights that I would make. Let me know your thoughts down below. Truly interested in what you guys would do. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.